testing, testing, testing. Slideshow. Share my screen. Let's see, where's that my okay, looks like I got it going on. I'm Dr. Hamilton Stubbs. I'm a double board certified sleep specialist. I am a board certified pediatrician and a certified nutrition specialist. This talk is about sugar. I'm calling it the dark side of sugar because we don't think about, or some of us just don't know, how sugar is impacting our health. It's a substance or ingredient that we have grown up with, and we tend to think of it as a happy thing or something to give someone as a reward. In fact, dessert is a treat that many of us get after eating a meal. Now, I'm not sure how much of a treat sugar really is, so let's get into it. First, a disclaimer, this talk is for information only. I believe that everyone is entitled and deserves to have their own healthcare professional. And so this is for information only. If I say something that is of interest to you or you think could help your healthcare provider, make a note of it, and the time you see your healthcare provider, have a discussion. The webinar does not provide medical advice. It doesn't establish a doctor-patient relationship, and the information is thought to be accurate at the time that I'm sharing it, but healthcare does change and research is constantly being done. So I strongly advise you and encourage you to read on the subject and be sure to talk with your healthcare professional so that you can stay up to date, get the best healthcare available to you, and optimize your health. I also want you to know that I've been able to get a lot of training in my career as a sleep specialist, pediatrician, as a certified nutrition specialist, a neurologist, a child neurologist, and many years as a nurse, including a critical care nurse, and through the Academy of Lifestyle Medicine, which I recently joined. But I am not a dietitian, nor am I a nutritionist. I am a medical researcher, sharing with you some of the things that I have learned on my journey to be healthy. So these are the objectives. I'm going to give an overview of diabetes, Alzheimer's, hypertension, and kidney disease, explain how sugar is the common denominator, and how to lower the risk of diabetes, Alzheimer's, hypertension, and kidney disease just by doing one thing. And then I'm going to review the No Added Sugar 7-Day Challenge Journal. So here's my story. I thought that I was pretty healthy. I didn't have any diagnosed medical conditions. I felt pretty good. And I just felt that I was doing just fine. But when the pandemic started, I had more time to focus on my own health. Our practice transitioned over to telehealth for just a little while, and our patient load decreased for various reasons. So this gave me a lot of time to focus on myself. I decided I would read some of the books that my colleagues had suggested to me. And I started doing some things because when I focused on my own health, I noticed that I didn't feel as good as I thought I should. I spent a lot of time having organic meals. I eat mostly vegetables, and I try to take certain supplements, do my exercise, but I didn't feel healthy. And for all the things I was doing, I didn't think my health, the way I felt, was a good return on investment for all the things I was doing. So I was on a journey to see, how do I optimize my health? How do I wake up and feel energized? How do I go through my day without dragging? And how do I decrease achy joints and get rid of any kind of brain fog? So this was my mission when I started at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020. And one of the things that I did was I started a Facebook group for Christian women, 50 and better. We've now changed that to open it up to any age. But the reason I did this was before the pandemic, I taught a module at the International Association of Ministers' Wives and Ministers' Widows called Minding the Temple. And this module focused on the 4 major illnesses that affect African Americans: cancer, diabetes, obesity, and hypertension. When I was looking for something to do with this group of women, I decided to do a 7-day no added sugar challenge. And that what I found was we had remarkable improvements in our health. So I started looking a little closer at sugar and how does sugar affect health. So here's a few of the diseases that are associated with sugar. And I need to add a few more on here: diabetes, Alzheimer's, hypertension, kidney disease, obesity, cancer, liver disease, periodontal disease, dental caries, dysbiosis of the gut, osteoporosis, osteopenia. And this is what I'll add: metabolic disorder, metabolic syndrome, and what's called dysmetabolic syndrome, and COVID-19. Yep, you heard me. Researchers have found that people with a high blood sugar level are more likely to become infected when exposed to the coronavirus that is causing the current pandemic. Sugar is also associated with sleep disturbance, brain fog, obesity. I have obesity here, but it's a specific type of obesity too, called truncal obesity. And it will also elevate your insulin level so that you can become insulin resistant, and you might be pre-diabetic, but it's the sugar. And if you don't do anything, it can go on to become diabetes type 2. So what is sugar? Sugar is processed either from sugar canes or sugar beets. And in the USA, it's mostly sugar beets. And sugar is different from the fresh juice in that the sugar that we're eating is processed. It's put in a centrifuge and has some chemicals that are added to it. So by the time this juice is finished with the process of what we know as making sugar, it is granulated. And in this process of going from beet juice or sugarcane juice to granulated sugar, all of the nutrients are stripped away. Sugar is considered to have 0 nutritive value. And there's different types of sugar. There's the simple sugars, glucose and fructose. You also have dextrose, galactose, sucrose, maltose, lactose. On the label, look for the word O's, and that'll give you some ideas if you have any sugar in there that's one of these, because there are over 200 different names for different types of sugar or sugar-like things that are added to our food. Here's some sugar alternatives: honey, agave, molasses, date syrup, and brown sugar. But these are not really healthier than granulated sugar. They're different. They are not as processed, but they aren't considered to be much different because each of these contains fructose. So why are sugar alternatives not the answer? Fructose, the fructose content. For example, agave has a very high fructose level, and our body doesn't know how to use this. It goes to the liver where it's turned into fatty acids. The body will use it to eventually have some energy from it, but we don't have the same checks and balance in our body to hold down the metabolism of fructose. So we get too much fructose in the body, it gets stored in the liver as fatty liver, and this is a problem with the liver being damaged. Also, it is too much sugar in the bloodstream. The muscles don't have any way to handle all of that. So you end up with a high sugar level in the blood. And that high blood level of sugar leads to a changing of the protein called glycation. And the glycated proteins are very harmful to us. One of the markers that we use in healthcare to measure glycated sugar in the blood is the hemoglobin A1c. So fructose is harmful in large amounts, causes liver toxicity, it's associated with belly fat, but it comes from everywhere. Table sugar, fruits, vegetables, sugarcane, sugar beets, corn. But the difference is, unlike table sugar, fruits and vegetables have minerals and fiber that kind of limit how rapidly that fructose is absorbed from the GI tract into the bloodstream and then presented to the liver. So here's your a picture of the GI tract. You can see that it's starting at the pharynx, going down into the esophagus, into the stomach, into the small intestines, into the large intestines. This GI tract in the small and large intestines is separated from the bloodstream, lymphatics, or the inside of your body system by one single layer of cells. When the body is presented with a large glucose or fructose level, it goes immediately to the liver. And if it's glucose, the body's going to use that right away. If it's fructose, we have to do something with that. And what happens is eventually it's stored in the liver because we have too much. This is how the body handles fructose and glucose. This is the difference. When we get fructose introduced into our body uses that fructose to make fatty acids and triglycerides. When we eat glucose, the body uses that glucose to make energy. So the glucose metabolism is pretty clean, whereas fructose is leaving some things behind that are detrimental to our health. The American Heart Association recommends that we limit how much added sugar we eat in a day. The recommendation is women should eat no more than 6 teaspoons and men no more than 9. So what is added sugar? It is what's added to our food or put into our food that didn't occur there naturally. Added sugar is used to enhance the flavor or as a preservative. So diabetes, it is a disease in which the body's ability to produce or respond to the hormone insulin is impaired, and this results in abnormal metabolism of carbohydrates, and it causes elevated levels of glucose in the blood and urine. Sugar has no nutritive value, it's toxic. When we eat too much of it, we run the risk of developing diabetes type 2. Alzheimer's disease is considered diabetes type 3 or diabetes of the brain. And there is a relationship to sugar, and that sugar is associated with inflammation. Hypertension has several mechanisms that are related to sugar. Sugar is inflammatory. It can cause problems with our blood vessels, making them become stiff and build up a plaque, but it also helps to retain sodium and water. And what this does is increase the load on the blood vessels and on the heart, so that we now have a higher volume to pump or higher volume within the blood vessel, and this is causing high blood pressure. Now, when I was diagnosed with high blood pressure, my physician put me on a diuretic. That diuretic dropped my blood pressure to 132/80, and using the current recommendations, this is still too high. But when I just took added sugar out of my diet, my blood pressure went into what is considered a normal range, 128/78. So the top number is the systolic pressure, the bottom number is the diastolic. The systolic pressure is that pressure that the heart has to pump against, and the diastolic pressure is what remains in the blood vessel after the heart has already pumped. And the lower this top number is better for our health as long as you don't have symptoms of hypotension or low blood pressure. Kidney disease is also associated with sugar because of the complication of hypertension. When we have high amounts of pressure being presented to our kidneys, these small blood vessels were not made to handle that. And so they get damaged. And when they get damaged, we can lose different functions within the kidneys because we start to lose some of the units that help filter out our impurities and make the urine. So how to lower the risk of chronic diseases? Diet, exercise, sleep, and faith. Let's talk about them. Table sugar is 1 molecule of glucose and 1 molecule of fructose. So it's 50-50. Keep that in mind because when you switch over to alternative sugars, you are not necessarily going to get 0 fructose. In fact, it may be almost as much as table sugar. Table sugar makes you overeat because it's an addictive substance. Once you start to eat sugar, it makes you want to eat more sugar. So you start to have cravings. Sugar blocks some of the wakefulness hormones, like orexin, and causes sleepiness. It's been associated with depression and anxiety. And when people eat a lot of sugar and they are monitored in a sleep lab, the pattern of their sleep is consistent with sleep disturbance. Sugar causes hardening of the arteries, cardiac disease, hypertension, type 2 diabetes, fatty liver, dementia, brain fog, and dental caries. And we now know that your dental health is associated with your cardiac health. One of the ways to monitor your sugar intake is to read food labels. And the Federal Drug Administration made it a little easier for us by making a law that manufacturers have to label on their food how much added sugar is in their product. And this became effective in 2020. So here's a label. This is a carton of sugar. This is a container of yogurt. Now this is organic, plain yogurt, the kind that's recommended if you want to get less sugar. So here is the total sugars. And total sugar includes sugars naturally present in the food and beverages, such as sugar in the milk or fruit, as well as any added sugar that could be present in the product. So within the total sugar, you're going to get fiber, which would be part of the complex for complex sugars. And then you have your added sugar. So when you take out the fiber and you look at, when you take out fiber, that's the true amount of added total sugar that you have. And that's important to know because manufacturers are always trying to figure out how can they make a product that we want and kind of hide it from us that it may have something in it that we don't want. So remember early on, I told you there are many names for sugar. They have found ways to just add it in there so they don't have to label it as sugar. So when you look at the total carbohydrates, subtract out fiber. and that will tell you the total sugar. And knowing the total sugar is helpful too, because we don't want to overeat total sugars. And remember, we are limiting added sugar. Now, this has 11 grams of added sugar. 4 grams is 1 teaspoon. So this has almost 3 teaspoons of added sugar per serving. And a serving is 1/3 cup. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't usually take out any kind of measuring cups. I just put them in a bowl and add my own fruit, which means that I'm adding some things with extra sugar in it. The other thing is added sugar. Added sugar is the added during the processing of food, and it includes things like sucrose and dextrose or sweeteners, and sometimes syrup, honey, sugars from concentrated fruit or vegetable juices. They do not include naturally occurring sugars. So on that food label, one of the things you might want to look at is the ingredients, because sometimes the food has been sweetened by fruit juice. And concentrated fruit juice is just another form of sugar. It doesn't have the fiber. How to succeed in reducing sugar intake. Journaling is a big help. And take photos. Sometimes people don't feel like writing down everything they ate. Taking a photo will be helpful because you can look back on what you ate, get some idea what's on that label, and then you want to monitor not only how much are you eating in a day, but how much are you eating in a week. And this is important because we all like to have a treat. We don't want to be left out of all of the fun activities happening around us. And unfortunately, a lot of those fun activities in the USA center around having foods that have a lot of sugar. So if you know how much you've eaten that day, you can kind of cut back so that when the event is going to occur where there is a lot of sugar, you can eat a little more freely because you haven't eaten so much the rest of the week that you'll just be constantly over the recommended label, recommended amount. Use apps. Some apps will help you with monitoring how much you're eating, can also tell you how much sugar is in certain foods. Get a support system, and your support system should be someone that is going to be accessible to you. And when you start to feel like, oh, I think I'm just going to go get that donut, somebody you can call, talk you down, and try to give you a reason, help you remember those reasons why you wanted to cut sugar out of your diet in the first place. And remember, we're not trying to cut sugar out completely, although if you can, that's probably much better. But for most of us, just reducing added sugar to the recommended amount by the American Heart Association or less. Remove temptations. It's very hard to eat a low sugar diet if you know you like butter pecan ice cream and you're keeping it in your refrigerator. The moment you have a day where you feel a little down or you didn't get a good sleep, you'll start to have cravings for sugar or self-medicate to boost your mood level up. And that's when having these temptations around within reach can make it difficult for you to stay on your no added sugar or low added sugar diet. Don't beat yourself up if you can't stay on the low added sugar diet. Prepare yourself for a relapse. So let's just say you're like one of the ladies in the Facebook group. She called on day 3 and said, I went to a fast food restaurant. I ordered a fast food meal. I ate the whole thing, a biscuit and a sweet tea. And she wanted to give up. But what I encourage her to do is count that as just a day where you ate all the sugars that you wanted. And now you got that out of your system. Start again tomorrow. Get back on the wagon. And so she didn't do 7 days of the challenge. She did 5. But guess what? In those 5 days, she had a loss of shortness of breath. That went away. And she said the chest pain she'd been seeing her cardiologist for was gone. And that's only with 5 days of not eating added sugar beyond the recommended 6 teaspoons per day for her. and be kind to yourself. Say nice things to yourself. If you are having a relapse and you're eating some sugar, know that it's not your fault, that society is kind of set up that way for us to have a lot of extra sugar. It's all around us. Be kind to yourself. Just know that tomorrow is another day, or you can start over again. So if you do have a problem where you don't stay on the no added sugar or low added sugar, just tell yourself it's okay. Give yourself a pat on the back and say, hey girl, you're still great. You're still fantastic. Get yourself up and get back on that low added, no added sugar wagon, either later today or tomorrow, and you'll be happy that you did. And then don't forget to join the Facebook group for sugar. Here's the journal that was created. This is on my website, and it's a 7-day with a 3 days of bonus. And that's because you actually need about 10 days to eliminate the cravings or decrease the cravings for sugar. You may not be able to eliminate them completely in 10 days, but you might be able to get control over it so that you don't drive out of the way just to get a milkshake or some other sweet treat. And what we're doing in that journal is we're just monitoring how much sugar, added sugar, have we eaten at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then there's a place for snacks at the bottom. You're going to label this day 1 and then put the total over here. So for example, if you are eating oranges and apples for breakfast, I wouldn't really count that. But if you're having kombucha and the kombucha has 14 grams of sugar per serving, you definitely want to add that. So you will put a 14 over here. And at lunchtime, if you have, something like cookies that have added sugar, and maybe that sugar, the added sugar is 8 grams of sugar, or you might even have some lunch meat that has added sugar, or burgers that are pre-made, they have added sugar. Read the label, total it up, put it over here. Same thing with dinner. Now, finding the sugar in your diet can be a little bit more than just knowing OSE, because there are plenty of other forms of sugar, their chemical names, that are in our food. So I have a little handout for that. If you want that, go to my website and send in a request. We'll try to get that to you. So I hope this has been helpful. And we are now in our transformation, our 21-day health challenge and transformation. If you'd like to join, go to my website and look at the top of the page. Click on the banner. It will take you to where you need to be to register to participate in the free 21-day Christian Women's Health Challenge and Transformation. Now, we did expand this program. It's open to people who are maybe not Christian, but you don't mind being around Christians. And we also opened it up to men. I hope it's been helpful. I hope it's been a blessing to you. And don't forget, be a blessing to someone else.